Well, today, guys, I'm going to be walking you through how I mixed my cover of The Negative One and how it came about that I had the privilege of working with two of the most amazing musicians I've ever found on social media. Let's get into it. So what's going on, guys? Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. Real quick, I just have to say a huge thank you to Tom and Fernando, the boys that helped me on this project. They absolutely killed it, man. It was quick and easy, no hiccups. It was just such a breeze to work with, and it was a lot of fun to mix and put all the pieces together. If you have not seen the actual collab, here's a clip of it.
Fire and caffeine, a lot of nicotine. I'm on a burn, so I better tell you everything. The competition, the superstition. Never mind, cause you're never gonna give in.
And I'll put a link to that video in the description of this video. Go and subscribe to Fernando's channel, man. He is just so awesome, man. He's just an amazing drummer. And Tom, the cat that was on the vocals in that song, he has a band called Casket. Follow them on Instagram. Give them a shout out on YouTube, man. They're so heavy, man. And both of them together are like the stars of this project. And all I had to do was play guitar and bass, man. I was just sitting in the background and letting those two dudes absolutely shine in this project. So I want to show you guys how I went about mixing this project. So here's a Logic project, and I want to knock out the little stuff first. The keys and the SID scratching, because I'm very proud of the scratching, and it's not what you think it is. So real quick, I'll just show you guys the keys. The string vox was used for the chorus, and the waves motion bass was used for the, how do you say it, like the pre-verse and post-chorus type of sound. So here's that really shrill, harsh sound. And then, so just in the context of the mix. And that's it. And then these are all just stock Logic instruments. I didn't, use any third-party MIDI instruments or anything. But then the string vox I used for the chorus.
The Lord of Life.
So they're just very subtle, and like if you didn't notice it, wasn't like if I didn't point it out, you wouldn't notice it per se. But yeah, they're really, really subtle. And then I use another waves motion bass here after the second chorus. And I just had them all sent to a bus and just used the spreader stock Logic plugin here just to kind of like give them some more space and more depth. And basically what a spreader is, it's just basically like a frequency expander, and it just pushes out that frequency range just out more, and just kind of like just makes it a little bit of a wider mix. Because I wanted the keys to spread out a little bit because they are all shooting right down the middle, and I have a lot of stuff right down the middle, like the bass, the vocals, and the drums. So just by using the spreader, it just kind of spreads them out and doesn't have them so narrow down the middle. And then after that, just a little bit of compression and volume reduction with the Joel Wanasek keys plugin from Joey Sturgis Tones. And that's it. Alright, now real quick, I want to talk about the SID DJ scratch. I am so proud of this, man. And it's not what you thought it was, because it is actually me beatboxing. And I want to show you this, guys, real quick. So what I'm doing there is I have my Shure SM7B in my right hand, and with my left hand I'm making this kind of weird kind of L looking shape, if you can see it real quick, and I'm just breathing through the little hole here, and I'm actually sucking air, and I'm just going, and it's just a little thing that we came up with when we were kids, when we were like 12 years old, trying to learn how to beatbox. And I was just like, man, I don't have a DJ, I don't have any scratching equipment, I'm just gonna go for it. And so I'm beatboxing here. It's two separate takes. Joey Sturgis gain reductions on both of these tracks, and I just had them panned a little bit right and left just to get them a little wider again, so they're not sitting right down the middle and they're not getting buried in the vocals or overpowering the vocals. And I'm just so proud of it, man. So I just sent them all to a bus, and then I just had a little bit of EQ to give it the more of like the megaphone sound, because when you cut out of the low end and the really high end, it kind of gives it a mid-range and then boosts around like 1 to 3K. And it just gives it like a more megaphone type of sound. And so it just makes it sound more artificial and not like a voice. And then I use a Logic pedal board, just a little bit of delay. And then again with the spreader, because although I'm panning them right and left, I just want them to kind of not be in the forefront of the overall, like the mix right down the middle. I wanted to push them out. And, you know, I kind of use, again, the mid-range frequency around 200 hertz to 760, or excuse me, 7,600. And yeah, just kind of get that mid-range just pushed out a little bit more. And then just again with the keys plug-in from Joe Wanasek, a little bit of compression and a lot of volume reduction, just because I wanted to have, you know, the vocals themselves, the nature of your voice is very dynamic because of all the air pushing in and out. So I wanted to compress them a little bit. But the final product I think sounds amazing. I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud of that. Like, I came up with that. And then real quick, I even gave myself like a DJ solo here. And it sounds kind of goofy like by itself, but in the context of the mix, it kind of works, you know what I mean? I'm really proud of that. I thought that was a cool little thing that I came up with. I don't know too many other people that have ever done that on a Slipknot cover, beatbox to create the Sid Wilson DJ scratch. So my attention to detail was, you know, extreme in this case for this cover, because I wanted to nail it, because I knew the type of caliber of musicians I was working with. So I wanted to absolutely crush this song in every aspect. So before we get to them, I'll do my parts real quick. I had the most boring parts, the guitars and the bass. We'll start with the bass real quick. I'm using my Ibanez 5-string that I've never really talked about much on this channel, but it's just like Ibanez 5-string with Bartolini's in it. And I did the same thing I always do, man. It's just like one kind of cleanish channel and then one extremely dirty channel using my Sans Amp Bass Driver DI Box V2. It's the exact same take, just doubled the track and then blend them on a bus. And I was actually pretty proud of my bus, because my bus was actually pretty basic, I believe. So real quick, dark glass. And then Joey Sturgis Tones, I believe the Misha plugin. Yes. So that gives it the more of the clank, if you will. And then Virtual Mix Rack, Warm Present Bass. This is the preset I always use. And then Eosis Air EQ. There's a huge dip in the mids, a little of the brittle sounds around 2 to 4K, a huge low cut at 60 hertz, and then a high cut at 10K. But the main thing you want to take away from this is the overall big dip in the mids, because again, the guitar lives in the mids, the vocals lives in the mids, the snare of the drums lives in the mids. So like, you don't really need mids for bass, because there's a lot of other stuff competing in that frequency range that really drive the song, like the vocals and the snare in particular. And so I always cut that out. And then my favorite plugin, I really do believe this is my favorite plugin, you know, for a lot of reasons, is the Joe Wanasek BG Bus, just because you can split, as I've said before, you can split the high end and the low end of the bass. Pretty compressed low end, and then rather, I mean, it's still very compressed, but in comparison, just a little bit more dynamic high end. And here's the overall bass sound. So just the nature of the Slipknot bass sound in general is not very like distorted or clanky. It's kind of just like a rather conservative bass sound. And so I kind of just wanted to go with that. Nothing like too like fuzzy or aggressive or rowdy. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to keep it pretty tame and pretty just like not a lot of distortion. So I think it's a solid bass sound. A little clanky, a little more clanky than the Slipknot sound. But I like that. I like the clank bass. And now we'll just talk about the guitars real quick. The guitars were fun for a lot of reasons, but the main reason was this is the first time, guys, I've ever, I believe ever, that I've recorded an entire song solely off of just the guitar track. I was the one that reached out to these guys. Well, I reached out to Fernando, and then he reached out to Tom. And so, you know, it's a lot harder to work with guitars and drums and, you know, a band setting when there's like no MIDI drums or things like that. You know what I mean? Like we created this from scratch. And so I created the template of the song from scratch. And it was very challenging to play to solely a click track and just remember the whole song without the feel of the bass. It's pretty challenging, but I thought it came out really good. So I quad tracked these guitars, something I haven't been doing a lot lately, but I did. And I solely used Mesa Boogie amps for this project. I used my dual rectifier, this red guy, that's just out of frame. I used that for the quiet tracks that were panned a little bit more inward, and then the main track were the DC3, the combo amp that I just did a demo of on this channel. That was with the main rhythm sound, and then the dual rectifier was kind of just sitting in the back because it has a little bit more low end just with the nature of the 100-watt head. So I'll give you the full soloed guitar sound. And so what I like about this track is the DC3 is doing the majority of the legwork. I love that little combo amp is doing the majority of the output for the guitar track. I think it's really, really cool that a little amp that is like almost 30 years old and one of my favorite amps because of the nostalgia factor in my childhood is able to have such an awesome sound in 2019. So it was really cool. And then just send everything, all the tracks are completely dry. Send them all to a bus, and what I used was a stock Logic noise gate because the TC Electronics Sentry noise gate, although it's great, sucks 9 volts like it's nobody's business. Like it sucks a 9 volt in an entire recording session, and it's very frustrating, very expensive. So I'm not using the Sentry noise gate as of late. But Virtual Mix Rack, my stock preset heavy guitars, basically just a dip in the low mid frequencies, a slight boost around 200 hertz. The virtual preamp, which I love, gives it a little bit of artificial harmonics, if you will. A compressor with a 4:1 ratio with a rather in between aggressive and conservative threshold. Slow attack, fast release because you don't want it to be clamping on the transients too much. So have that slow attack so it doesn't just clamp down immediately. It's the complete difference, or complete opposite of a lead tone where you want it to clamp on the initial transients because you want to create like a lead sound to be a giant wall of sound. Whereas rhythm stuff, I like to have it a little bit more dynamic and it doesn't create that volume swell effect. So that's what I do. Slow attack, fast release. And then the Revival, a little bit of thickness and a little bit of shimmer just to give it a more breathy and heavier sound, if you will. If you guys have seen my tutorials on how I mix my stuff, you've seen that preset all the time because that's like my go-to, my sound. And real quick, I also have a low cut at 88, high pass, and then my low pass at 10K or 11K, just about. Then the C4 Waves plugin, just a multi-band compressor right here in the low mids. You guys have seen that all the time. And then the Joe Wanasek BG guitars. Not a lot of compression because everything else is already pretty much compression. This is just more of like a volume fader and a little bit of safety blanket just in case anything else that gets past the C4 plugin is clamped down even more on the Joe Wanasek guitars BG bus. Alright, now that I got everything out of the way, all the things I did, I want to focus on these gentlemen, man. These guys are so talented. So now, I'll be honest, I don't know too much about what Fernando did with his drums, but I know everything he did was in-house, so I really didn't have to do much with mixing. I know that we had several takes of his drum bus that he sent over to me. As you can see, this one, the final one that made the project, was less low end because his kick was a little bit too boomy and bass heavy. I love what he did with his mix because the kick is rather clicky and it's not as bass heavy as it was, before you guys heard the final project. He put his kick in check, and I loved how it came out because it's super clicky now, and it's not the star of the show. The snare is the start of the show. The snare is the driving force of this entire track. I tried my very best to make sure that I didn't bury the snare with all the other stuff going on. And his cymbals aren't super compressed, which is another thing that I absolutely love, because when you start to compress when you start to compress drums, the first thing that'll start to stick out, in my opinion, is the cymbals. They start to turn into this huge wash of and really like take over the track. And so I love what he did with it. And all I did was just throw one plugin onto his bus, the Joel Wanasek drum compressor, and just a little bit more of compression and a little bit of volume reduction, just because I just wanted to tuck everything in just a little bit more, because there's a lot of moving parts other than just solo drums. So with and without. You can almost not even tell the difference. The only thing I hear is a slight difference in the snare. When I put the compressor on, the snare is just a little bit more in your face, and ultimately that was what I was going for. And then lastly, we'll talk about the vocals. Again, now these vocals were recorded in Texas with Fernando. Fernando is also an audio engineer, and Tom, I believe, just by looking at the take here, it looks like it looks like one take to me. I can't really hear any like double tracking of the vocals. If he did, it's tucked away and it's extremely tight. I was just blown away with that, because when I do my own vocals, I have to like double track them, or even triple track them, if you will. And I was really, really impressed with this. It just sounds like one solid vocal take, man. And just listen to this.
Golly, why are we the enemies? I never follow and I never make apologies. You're the bitches, I'm gonna get ya, because you all can't support each other. It's enough for the cynical, you're so political. You're getting ready cause the first move is critical. Reciprocity, somebody's yesterday. What do we learn from our time in captivity? The Lord of Lies, the Morning Star.
Like, so brutal, man. And I asked Fernando what was that recorded through. He said a Shure SM7B, a mic preamp, and then a little bit of post EQ and a little bit of gain reduction by Joey Sturgis, and then he sent it over to me. And I literally didn't have to do anything with this vocal take. All I did was just put on the BG vocals just to tuck it a little bit into the mix, just a little bit more compression and a little bit of volume reduction. Kind of just what I did with the drums, like almost identical. Other than that, I didn't touch him, because like they're just so perfect, man. I'll play you something else, man. Just like when he kicks it in.
Fire and caffeine, a lot of nicotine. I'm on a burn, so I better tell you everything. The competition, the superstition. Never mind, cause you're never gonna give in. If we're quiet and that's how you like it.
Like, so sick, dude. Like, some of the sickest vocals I've ever heard. And I had the privilege of putting it in one of my projects, man. Like, I was extremely humbled by both of these dudes. They're just so talented, and they killed it, man. Like, just those two together, like, is enough for me to like get my head moving and be like, fuck yeah.
The same drama and different disguise. I'm bound to walk with a target on my back. At least I'm ready for another attack. The Lord of Lies, the Morning
So sick, man. And then I had the privilege of being in there too.
Star, you had to be set free. Opposing sides, your choices are the negative one in me.
So all I did on the master bus, master fader, is a little bit of high pass and low pass, just at, let's see, around 40 and 15K, and just get rid of all the super harsh brittle sounds and the super subsonic low bass frequencies that you really can't even hear. And then the BG mix, which just gives me a little bit of gain reduction, tucks everything in at the end.
Lord of Lies, the Morning Star, you had to be set free.
It is barely just kissing my mix, and I love how everything is good to go before it even reaches this final stage. So it's just clamps on just the slightest bit of any gain that's kind of sticking out. And then just lastly, as always, man, just a fab filter limiter, just to kind of use it as a compressor, in my opinion, where like you boost the volume and reduce the threshold. That way there's not as much gap between your ceiling. It kind of just pushes everything up like this, as opposed to a much more dynamic range and volume and gain, and it gets it ready to be mastered. So that is it, guys, man. Just I love this project, man. I was so humbled and thankful that these guys were so energetic and had the drive that I had into putting into this project. And they've already said it themselves, like they want to do another one ASAP. And I have a gentleman, a bass player in mind that would love to be in this project. He's currently on tour, so he knows who he is. So be on the lookout for all three of us and potentially a fourth person coming into this. And I can't thank them enough for, again, just being so easy to work with and having that drive. They're quick, Johnny on the spot with everything, you know, not picky at all with the mix. They're not nitpicking everything. It was really, really refreshing. And guys, please follow them, subscribe to their channels, links down below. They're so awesome, and I can't wait to work with them again, seriously. So guys, thank you so much for watching to this point in time in this video. I sincerely appreciate you sticking around and letting me showcase this amazing collab. I'm out of here, guys. Stay metal, and I'll see y'all next time.
Opposing sides, your choices are